There's been a lot of literature out there about sort of these contemporary legends about welfare queens and Cadillacs and luxury items bought on with welfare money. And we know when we try to investigate these stories that most of them are just not true.
Within the next 6 months, we're going to see exponential changes in the way welfare looks, or at least the way that people think about welfare.
You do see some reactions from people. You know, if you say, well, I work at the free clinic, you can just see that stigma. You'll hear people say, well, if they would get a job, or, you know, if they would, you know, do this, do that, and it's just not that easy. If jobs are hard enough to come by for, you know, people with high school diplomas, with college educations, you can only imagine how hard they are to come by if you're not educated.
Not long into the research, it was clear that Ronald Reagan's story about welfare fraud and the welfare queen in 1976 clearly shaped contemporary policy about public assistance. There's just no doubt about it. This project is called Faces of Welfare. The goal is to get a sense of the perceptions that people have, certainly in Alamance County, locally, but also more broadly, nationally, about public assistance, about welfare.
I think for many, many years, basically since I have been a part of the agency and since really I graduated from college myself, there have been lots of myths about who welfare recipients are.
One instance that comes to mind, and it always comes to mind as far as perceptions, is when we moved into our current location, there was an article in the newspaper, the local newspaper, and they had taken a picture of one of our patients, and he had tattoos on his arms. And so the comments that came from the article were, a lot of them were not, this is a great service to the community. It was, if he can afford to have tattoos, he can afford health care.
One of the crucial parts of this project is that we wanted this to not just be sort of approved by our community partners, by people, you know, in Alamance County who are working day to day on these issues, but actually to benefit and to contribute to the same kind of work that they were doing.
Anytime we can clarify a situation about community needs, it's going to help everybody. And particularly with United Way, as we try and raise dollars in the community for priority needs or for needs of people that are struggling, that might be on public assistance, if we can let people know the true story of what's going on there and dispel those myths, that can only help our organization.
What this project does, it goes further. It brings in the whole research piece and presents it in possibly a more professional light than what we as an agency could do on our own as the welfare department.
Any awareness that we can use to let people know what a problem is, what we're trying to do to help it, and it's being done the right way, only helps us when we go out looking for donations and people to help us.
Through our research and by destigmatizing that population, people might be able to say, oh yeah, these are people, like, you know, this person could have been my next door neighbor who just got dealt a really unlucky hand and now they need a place to stay for the night. It can happen to anyone, especially right now.
The families that you're representing or simulating represent the lives of real people who live in this community, who live in communities across the country. Some of you may have come from low-income families, so we may be simulating things that you're already familiar with. So just be aware that even though it's a simulation, it does represent the reality for many people in our country.
take a peek if you pay now, it'll give you another week or two.
Okay, so, do you know where the father is? Do you have children? I have 2 children. Okay, do you know where the absent father is?
That's not enough.
Water main break at the school. If anyone has a child at the public school, you must go right now and
I need at least $150.
You don't have any cash. So we have $190. See, someone stole our Are you sure? What if I give you some time for me?
I snuck out of school and back there.
What happened?
We did sort out our priorities. So I was a grandmother raising 2 kids with a disabled husband, and one of the kids had ADD, and paying for that medication was completely out of the question.
My family was trying to decide between paying utilities and rent versus paying for food, and we couldn't figure out which was more important, but then I had to go to work, so we didn't even have enough time to think about it. So I think it made me realize how much stress plays into decisions that may seem irrational, but really ultimately are a function of the chaos of people's lives.
I found myself only being able to think on a day-to-day basis. Like nothing was long-term. It was like really rare that I would think about the consequences of my actions.
The poverty simulation is always enlightening, even again, if we think we understand what a population is going through or people are going through. I thought what was interesting was that the poverty simulation was not people at the poverty level, even though it's called a poverty simulation. It's actually working class people that are just above that poverty level that do have some resources, but they're minimal and a lot of times not enough.
But I also want these narratives to directly inform how change is going to be made, because it's not enough to just hear the narratives. It's not enough to share the narratives, because all of us were clearly affected by these this experience.
I certainly think the poverty simulation will alleviate the stigma, or I hope it will. I think even the slideshow that was presented at the end, to see the local statistics where we have, 52% of the children in our school system on free and reduced lunch, that's staggering to think that more than half don't have enough food or enough resources to just feed their children. And certainly as students go out into the community and work in some of our nonprofits, they will certainly see the reality of that simulation.
And it's also getting them engaged in a series of ideas it's not just, oh, I'm sort of helping this organization or this group of people, but I'm actually thinking about, the pros and cons of particular policies. So they're becoming engaged intellectually and civically at the same time. And I think that's crucial for civic engagement.
I think that it's really important research, and I think that, publishing the 10 truths about welfare is, to me, that's one of those things that is going to have a bigger impact.
When we go before our Board of Commissioners or when we make recommendations to the state with regard to policy, we can use some of this information and data, as a basis or, if you will, back up for what we're requesting and what we're doing.
It's not just about getting it into the hands of the power brokers, it's getting it into the hands of a lot of us, the general public, who are sharing some of maybe the most damaging stories and ill-informed stories, not because they're malicious people, because they don't necessarily have the facts in front of them.
And certainly if we can use the results of this project to influence public policy, both locally and state level and otherwise, I think that would be tremendous, because we can work really hard on the grassroots level, but sometimes policy change is the only way to get change done.
I'd like to keep teaching this course, keep bringing new students into the project, so that we maintain a kind of an eye on this. I mean, as I say, I think this is an important issue that both for community needs, but for student learning and kind of transformative learning and, you know, civic engagement of getting students out there and really applying, you know, the things that they're learning with local community issues, with personal growth. I think that's going to be crucial for us to kind of maintain that for the foreseeable future.